They call it Halo. Where do I begin? This name, this series, this entity has become a household name worldwide. Believe it or not, there are still a lot of people in the world who play video games but have never laid a finger on any of the installments. Hell, some of those folks might be watching this video right now. But at the very least, the majority of said people have heard of Halo. It's become synonymous with the Xbox, so much so that the protagonist of most of the games has more or less become its mascot. Nintendo has Mario, Sega has Sonic, and Xbox has Green Armor Man. And I know there are other analogies I could make, maybe even some better ones, some better mascot representatives, but that's RGB, leave me alone. But how did Halo get so iconic? What has led to John Halo Chief here impacting the lives of so many people? It's not actually his full name, by the way. Please don't take that seriously. It was a joke. That was a ha-ha funny. That is not his actual name. I think the biggest thing at play here is the legacy that Halo's built for itself over time. Now, whether or not you think some of the more recent installments were to some degree, stinky poop, it's still safe to say that every game has made some sort of contribution or had some kind of element that made it stick out. Perhaps some elements were, in fact, stinky poop. But like everything, there had to be a starting point, a point in time when there wasn't decades worth of a legacy being passed down to a game with the name Halo. And that very point, my friends, was actually in 2001. November of 2001. Ah, yes. I was a wee lad, and one night my dad came home with something that would change my life. Halo Combat Evolved. Also, there was Mad Dash Racing. Now, Halo underwent a metric fuck ton of changes before finally hitting the shelves in November of 2001. From different genres to different points of view, and the biggest adversary during all of this for Halo was time. Apparently, Bungie had less than a year to take the ideas they were formulating and create a functioning video game that would be an exclusive debut for the Xbox. So we have a game, an exclusive game, an original IP cobbled together that nobody had seen before, set to be a flagship title for a console whose success was still yet to be determined at the time. Nobody knew whether or not Halo, or even the Xbox rather, would bear fruit when put out in the open for consumers. Now, because of that time crunch, the game had to be hella trimmed, with the final product only having 10 levels and just a teeny weeny amount of recycling some shit. And within these 10 levels, and the multiplayer that was kind of an afterthought, the game had to be a hit. The big thing that would draw crowds to the Xbox. The selling point. It was gonna work. It had to work. Luckily, the planets aligned for Bungie, and their creation wasn't a hit. It was a goddamn mamma jam grand slam. So yeah, the general reception of Halo Combat Evolved was quite positive. There were first-person shooters up to this point, but Halo had the benefit of being played on a controller that hadn't been experienced before. Stuff like Nintendo 64 titles had this bullshit to work with, so they were at a disadvantage in terms of having the best controls possible. And while there were titles on the PC that capitalized on the mouse and keyboard, Halo set a standard that heavily influenced the gaming landscape, whose effects that you still see to this day. You could say that combat had evolved. I'm sure that's a very original joke that has never been said before. Fucking 10 out of 10. Now, some would dare go as far to say that Halo Combat Evolved, and even Halo as a whole is overrated. But to truly find that out, we're gonna have to unpack this bad boy and take a look at the goodies within. I would like to preface this by saying I'm mostly going to be focused on the campaign this time around. The multiplayer was multiplayer. I'll be brief. Halo Combat Evolved has a rough draft of a multiplayer experience. Now, for it being something that was like on the back burner and just happened to be kind of put together at the end, it's not bad. I would be lying to you if I said I didn't have my fair share of playtime in it. I remember the split screen and the LAN parties. Ah, man, good times, bro. But it can be said that there was a lot left to be desired. So what we're going to do is we're going to summarize the multiplayer experience as it was the foundation upon which its successors built a multiplayer legacy starting with Halo 2 onward. I feel like I heard at some point that the multiplayer was kind of scrapped and done over, which would be understandable considering that Halo Combat Evolved had developmental hell, and that apparently carried on to Halo 2 as well. I think a lot of the time, people will play Combat Evolved multiplayer for the classic feel, but not necessarily because it's better than the other titles. But we can still say that it paved the way. That rhymed a little bit. Not bad. I'll be talking more about multiplayer in the later installments of the Halo franchise, but for this, I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely the weaker point. Mind you, this is likely the end result of the aforementioned nemesis of Halo that was time. I figured I'd at least say my piece up front and keep it very brief. This video is going to be dedicated to the experience that is the campaign. And with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. I'm gonna kick off with a brief description of the story. And with that, I'm going to keep spoilers to an absolute minimum on account of the folks out there who have not yet played Halo Combat Evolved, but it will be a little touch on the plot. So, here we go. Bent on humankind's extermination, a powerful fellowship of alien races known as the Covenant is wiping out Earth's fledgling interstellar empire. You and the other surviving defenders of a devastated colony world make a desperate escape to lure the alien fleet away from Earth. Shot down and marooned on the ancient ring world Halo, you begin a guerrilla war against the Covenant. You fight for humanity against an alien onslaught as you race to uncover the mysteries of Halo. A pretty decent way to sum up what you're about to jump into, right? Well, I sure hope so, because I just recited the back of the damn box. We start with a fade into the shot with an ominous foreign object in space. I wonder what you call that thing. We then pan over to see the Pillar of Autumn, a Halcyon-class warship for the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC, the human faction in Halo. We're then introduced to two key characters, Captain Keyes and the artificial intelligence Cortana. Key characters. Keys. We also get Sergeant Johnson, who at this point didn't actually have a name that's referenced in-game, but he is an absolute gem, real talk. Something that this opening cutscene is good at is establishing the setting, and that's where the story really thrives, within its environment. Not off of the protagonist and his emotions, but rather the environment surrounding him. So within the first 2 minutes, we know the essentials. This ship, the Pillar of Autumn, is fleeing from what's called the Covenant. The Covenant, apparently, has superior firepower and better ships. The Autumn did some kind of space jump at random and found this weird object in space near a planet. Oh yeah, and the Covenant's about to come kick your ass in 90 seconds, so get ready. Now, seeing that shit is about to hit the fan at light speed, Keyes orders everyone to their stations, which includes our star of the show.
He's hot! Blowing the pins in 5!
He is simply known as the Master Chief, the alleged sole survivor of a line of super soldiers known as Spartans. And another great addition to this game is, in fact, the silent protagonist. This empty suit of armor is meant for the player to put themselves into. The Pillar of Autumn is a very well done introductory course to the mechanics of Halo, as well as the theme in general. You run through the corridors of the ship, unarmed and dodging the crossfire of crewmen and marines against this oppressive force breaking into the Autumn, blast doors closing to cut off their advances, armories emptied as everybody prepares to fight to the death. So you get your shiny metal ass to the bridge, and Captain Keyes is ordering that all personnel evacuate the Autumn. And you, as the chief, The strongest soldier on the Autumn will be the carrier of the Autumn's most valuable asset, the colorful lady herself, Cortana. And then Keyes arms you with the weapon that's still praised to this day, the annihilator of armies, the first gun you lay your hands on as the Master Chief ever. The M6D pistol, also known as the Halo 1 pistol. This thing is an absolute fucking beast, and it will be your best friend in any level where you can find it, which is basically all of them, except maybe one. The level takes you through the motions of battle. You're introduced to some of the enemies you'll be facing as well as the weapons they possess. Marines fight at your side. If you play on Legendary, odds are they're not gonna last very long. You can make it your conscious effort to try and protect them and keep them from dying, but a lot of the time it's gonna be in vain.
We can use your help.
The rooms and corridors fill with blood, human and alien alike. Bullet marks and plasma scorchings cover the walls. Were it not for the low poly look of Combat Evolved and the alien blood being colored differently, it'd be a very gruesome sight to behold. As a super soldier, you just fucking punch the blood out of somebody when you hit them. It just fucking sprays everywhere. You're able to make it to the final lifeboat and just barely escape the Pillar of Autumn with your brothers in arms. Fanfare plays as the Autumn is struck with giant bolts of plasma fire, and your lifeboat begins to make its way towards this massive object, the closest thing the crew of the Autumn have to a saving grace. So yeah, it doesn't go very well for the others. But after that, Chief and Cortana do make it out okay. And then you proceed to take your very first steps onto this very weird ring world. There's green and water and trees, but there's a definite alien feeling to it. Sterile, with strange structures built into the environment. The second level of Halo, called Halo, is a fan favorite for a couple reasons, such as the exploration of the level, how open it is, and the variety of approaches you can take on your mission as you try to link up with survivors from the other lifeboats. I just gotta say, even though the first WoW feeling won't be there as much after the first playthrough, of course, the environment is still so capable of telling a story without anybody even saying a single word about the surroundings, with the exception of Cortana providing a little exposition here and there. And that's not just this level, this goes for just about all of them in their own way, and the way these environments transform as UNSC and Covenant forces do battle, blood and gore and bodies everywhere. And like I said before, there is exposition, but not any more than necessary. It's just enough to get you by. The rest of the story is conveyed through the settings. It's fucking big brain, dude. It's goddamn brilliant. It's not riddled with fucking cutscenes everywhere explaining stuff unnecessarily. I mean, shit, Cortana knocks a lot of the stuff out while you're playing the game, and it all just flows so naturally, and still keeps the game fun. And on the topic of fun, I think now is a good time to finally start talking about the glorious gameplay. Oh my lord, this game plays like fucking butter. The controls withstand the test of time and can easily be picked up in 2021. And onward if you're watching this later. And that is to be expected from one of the pioneers of the modern FPS control scheme. Never do the controls disrupt the flow of battle. Alternating between weapons, throwing grenades, melee attacks, and jumping all go together and can chain from one another like second nature, man. They're easy to learn and not too hard to master either. Now, one of the staple elements of Halo that I really believe defines the franchise is the weapon sandbox. The sheer variety and implementation of the entire arsenal provides every weapon with a purpose. Does your enemy have an energy shield? Well, may I introduce you to my dear friends' plasma pistol and plasma rifle? Oh yes, they'll be quite exquisite in extinguishing those shields for you. Is your enemy considerably far away, perhaps under cover of night? Well, then you should get acquainted with my good chap, the sniper rifle. Do you want something to fucking die? Well, look no further, old bean, because my dear old companion, the pistol, can do just about anything. You are always provided the tools to succeed, and unless you're playing on the hardest difficulty, you can absolutely thrive using anything. It's fucking phenomenal. But even if you don't use weapon X or Y, the game is still fun. Point is, the weapon sandbox is very flexible when you're fighting the enemies. These are the different races of the Covenant. Each of them have different strengths and weaknesses on the field, which make every battle unique depending on the aliens, the armaments, and your surroundings. Combat Evolved introduces enemies and just about everything progressively. You first learn of the lowest and highest of the pecking order, the Grunts and Elites. Grunts are overall cowards and the easiest alien to kill, but they compensate with numbers. They're also the only enemy that generally throws grenades. Elites are the Covenant combat leadership. They are, for all intents and purposes, your equal on the battlefield, even having their own personal body energy shields like Chief. However, Plasma is very effective at taking their shields down, and once those shields are down, you can stun lock them to death. You then soon come across Jackals, the middleman between Grunts and Elites, armed with a round energy shield that covers most of them and is very good for establishing choke points. The thing about that is Jackals don't normally move that much, and there are small openings on the shield. You can either throw a grenade at their position, or you can take down their shields with plasma weaponry, rendering those cheeks very susceptible to clapping. And when you finish getting acquainted with those three, you then get...
Oh, shit!
Hunters are basically living tanks. They're covered in very resilient armor, armed with a fuel rod cannon, and a shield that deflects weapon fire, and can be used for melee. They are the big guns of the Covenant and are a truly terrifying force to be reckoned with. Never mind, I guess. Halo Combat Evolved has a very well done sandbox, and using that sandbox on unique enemies is super satisfactory. And this game capitalizes on these qualities with every single encounter, all in a challenging but fair manner. Mostly. Now, a good fight is all fine and dandy, but that's not the only thing Combat Evolved excels at. It's not just who you're fighting or where you're fighting, but also how you feel when you're fighting. The levels are remarkable in the sense that they each have their memorable qualities. Pillar of Autumn, Halo, Truth and Reconciliation, The Silent Cartographer, all these levels have replayability and their own flavor. And the fucking music. The sound design in general is iconic in its own right. You can hear a track and know instantly which level you heard it in, not because of repetition, but because of memorability and chemistry with the level. Hell, even moments that aren't high-octane action are still so memorable.
Alert, Covenant dropship inbound. They must be looking for survivors. I recommend immediate evasion.
The weapon sounds are so crisp and satisfying, even to this day. And the music works with them to bring you hella satisfaction when committing death onto your adversaries. Now, I could go on with the legendary sound design and go about the spiel of each and every weapon and track. Oh god, I could talk about it forever. And the performances from the voice actors bring even the smallest characters to life. Just simply phenomenal. Halo would have been a very different game were it not for this fucking remarkable work done. But for the sake of being brief here, I'm going to say this. Even those who haven't played Halo can recognize the music and sounds. That's how powerful, how much of an impact the work on this game has made. And if you haven't already, I firmly believe that this game, if you give it a chance, will leave that impact on you as well. This here is going to be a little bit of a checkpoint, so I'm going to be ending this part of this chapter here, and we'll have a part 2 out to you in the near future, discussing more of the spoiler end and the second half of Halo Combat Evolved. If you want to go for a blind experience, I would recommend playing the game before watching that second part of the chapter. But if you don't give a shit, or you've already played Combat Evolved and you just want to listen to my wonderful voice, then by all means, please tune in to part 2 of Chapter 1 when it comes out, which will be, once again, in the very near future. In the meantime, feel free to keep updated on my activities via Twitter, Discord, and of course, the YouTube community tab. If you haven't already and you liked what you watched, feel free to subscribe and leave a like and turn on your notification bell so you know when I bring you the goodies. Feel free to join the Discord server. It's pretty chill, it's pretty cool. And if you feel so inclined, feel free to hit up the Patreon page to help support the endeavors of the channel. Thank you all very much for watching. This has been Papa Gabe. I am signing out. Until next time.